Last topic, drum machines replacing drummers.
Drum machines replacing drummers. Oh, good Lord, you're going to send me down the wormhole on this one.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah. So what this immediately opens up is sort of the ethical relationship of like humans and tech. And, you know, there's complications there for sure, because I can envision a world where ultimately computers do things better than us in almost every category, right? They eventually do when the technology evolves far enough. And I think this was an initial fear that a lot of people probably had when you were first able to, let's say, hit the quantize button in a DAW, when you were first able to say, here's the grid of music, here's what an analog human being played, and if you press this button, it adjusts their playing and puts it back on a grid, right? So, you know, you could also say there's certain styles of music where you just want the sound of something computerized. Trap music would be a good example. Like, yeah, you can play that stuff, but it also just sounds way cooler if a computer plays it or if it's digitized from its origin, you know? Now, there is one excellent piece of content that you can reference in this conversation, and it was actually something that Jojo Mayer put out via a TED Talk a while back, and it was called, if I'm not mistaken, The Distance Between 1 and 0.
0 and 1.
0 and 1. There you go. Yeah. So, yeah. It's a really cool TED Talk, and it sort of says that a computer, if it's operating in a binary system, that wherever a note goes, whether it's an eighth note or a 64th note or a ghost note on the snare or kick drum, any note that you could play, a computer has to make the decision of does it go here or here? It's a 1 or a 0. And the argument would be that there is a space between those two binary options that a human being gets to explore. Now, of course, the question would be if you can subdivide far enough, right? So let's say there's a 0 and a 1, and that would be like an eighth note here or an eighth note here. But really, if you were to say in between 0 and 1, this is where a human can operate and place this note in an organic place. But if a computer is able to quantify where that is and say, oh, it was 64.93% of the way between this 1 and this 0, then you could ultimately implement a binary system to subdivide between the 1 and the 0 with new, smaller subdivisions of other 1s and 0s, right? And this gets into that larger topic of like quantifying consciousness effectively, right? Can you use technology to unpack what is the human elements that we now would only define as just like human stuff, right? Like analog stuff, biology, consciousness in and of itself, thoughts and where they come from, musical expression and the organic or the analog nature of that. So those pieces of our humanity are of extremely high value to us, and I think one of the, I'll say this in an extreme way, like the impending threats of technology is that it would ultimately quantify these pieces of our humanity, and that a computer would be able to replicate our humanness in a way that is definitely not human, right? So if this is a really complex topic, if you want to learn more about this stuff, I've gone into it in episode 3 of All In with Adam, which is my other more philosophical podcast, not drumming related at all. But this relationship between tech and humanity is one that's always been very interesting to me. So the other side of this argument, though, is that you know, technology has enabled us to, I mean, first of all, have the recording industry. You don't get to record stuff without technology. I mean, I guess you could draw a certain line back in the analog tape days if you wanted to draw a line there, similar to how, like, the Amish drew the line with power tools as, well, no power. So they still use tools. Those are technological innovations. But they drew the line at, like, when you involve electricity, right? So everybody gets to draw these lines of where tech goes too far for you. It's very personal. It's very personal. And there's a lot of strong arguments on both sides of this. I don't know that we will see a world where at least live drumming has no value. I think we are a very, very, very long ways away from quantifying the human element of musical expression to the point where you just don't need humans anymore at all. I think there will be something that we can't quantify with technology that's going to exist in music for a very, very long time. One day I think we will. And I think there will be some indiscernible difference between a live show played by robots and a live show played by humans. I think one day we'll get there, but I don't think anybody watching this video will live to see such a thing. I do think that there are much more realistic threats that happen when you talk about recording environments, for sure, because there is a reality to this idea that if you needed drums for an album that you're recording or a musical project that you're recording, that it is certainly cheaper to program those drums and to rely on computers and technology to create them for you. And you can get very close to what you would have to pay a human to come in and perform for you to record it that way. So I think this kind of technology, drum machines, or just the idea of programming drums, I think it more directly threatens the recording environment than it does the live music environment. And with that said, I think that much how vinyl and things like that have become more popular, there is an element of nostalgia where people tend to look back and value when things were a little bit more organic and less technologically dominant. So I think that in itself will sort of preserve some of the recording opportunities that are within the music industry. So I think on principle, I'll have to give it an accent because I'm a fan of technology. I mean, I run a tech company in some respects. And then at the same time, I'll have to ghost it out of pure conspiratorial fear that robots are going to take over the world. So that's, we'll leave it at that, I suppose.
Skynet.
Neuralink, baby.
Cool.
Chip me up. Thank you so much for watching this clip from the Orlando Drummer Podcast. If you're looking for more content like this, you are formally invited to come join me on orlandodrummer.com. It's an online education platform, very much in the style of Netflix, and there you'll find over 160 hours of content waiting for you, ranging from in-depth lesson packs to audio and video masterclasses and everything in between. I'd love to have you on board. We'll see you guys there.